Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Writer's Room Horror Edition. I am your host, the Night Editor, Kat Rocha, and with me this evening is...
You sound like Natasha.
Yeah, but that's the closest I can
That or
do.
Kamala
Sorry.
Khan's dad.
That's the closest I can do. Sorry.
No, that was great. It is I, J.Ishiro, author and alien in a human suit, and we are dual broadcasting right now, but we'll talk about that later.
Mhm.
I tried to link basically the newer channel to get you some more subs.
Oh,
Cool.
thank you.
you.
I think it is on the newer channel. I can relink the other one too.
So introduce yourself, Fianna.
I'm just a Florida woman that wants different kinds of stories that may or may not like reflect or get away from the current trends of modern day.
You write the stories that go pew pew.
Yes. See, I don't need sad people with finches. Oh, though granted, some people do like hard sci-fi. Me, I'm trying to bring back the space fantasy.
Which we desperately need. Seriously.
So, before we get started,
Mhm.
tell them about the new channel.
For those of you who don't know, we have a new channel, and at this very moment, my brain has fried, and I completely forgot what it's called. It is
Wordcraft.
Wordcraft, or otherwise known as the Wordcraft Podcast, which you can find here on YouTube. Because as we know, YouTube sucks, and they have been throttling this original channel for a very long time. So we have started anew with Wordcraft. So please follow the link that Ishii has in the description and subscribe if you haven't already. In fact, all of you are in luck. This is the very first episode where we are broadcasting live from both channels.
And I think what we're going to do is we're going to do that for about a month, and then we're just going to do the Writer's Room only on the other channel.
Correct.
Because Wordcraft, the point is we're talking about, again, the craft of writing stories. We're not going to do any of the other weird casts there. That's for here. So this is the place where you get to hear us say all the horrible things and be politically incorrect. The other one is going to be a little bit more serious. It's going to have the Night Editor on a regular basis.
Mhm.
We have brought back Talking Shop, which is everything from book reviews to discussing industry, how to get your books published, and just whatever issue related is that show.
Correct. So go check it out. Subscribe, because after about a month, we will be that will be the only place that you can hear the Writer's Room.
And you know, when I hang out with Janelle, it's going to be in the old channel.
Okay.
The J.Ishiro channel. So anyway, all of you go over there, subscribe, ring the bell, and all that other crap, and let's get started.
Well, since it's the Halloween season, we are continuing having spooky themed shows, and we are going to discuss adding horror to your stories.
The art of crafting a horror story. I would say the first thing to realize about the horror story itself is it's a genre and an element. You can have plenty of stories that aren't horror with horror elements and vice versa. And so it's really important to just about any writer except maybe romance writers.
You can have horror. I mean, you need something scary so the woman can cling to her man and scream.
But would it,
And then
would
do
it
that later.
genuinely try to disturb or deliver an actual scare to the writer?
Or
to the
sometimes
reader.
they can turn it into body horror without meaning to. Anita Blake.
Ugh.
I agree.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that turned into horror. That turned into horror real quick. Ugh. Anyway.
So since I actually have written a fair amount of horror myself, gotten it published, and dealt with that quite a bit, I would say the first thing that most people get wrong about doing horror stories, if they've never written them before, is mood is everything. You don't have a movie screen or a TV screen to get across that it's, you know, a dark night. You know, you can't see anything. Something comes out of the darkness. You need to have style to what you're saying to build the right mood. The word choices need to be selected to fire off the right image in your head. That's the difference between the monster clawed his chest versus the monster raked across his chest, or slashed 3 fingers that buried into the skin and pulled back. That's the difference.
Yup. Or even if you're going to have your hero say, stick their fist into a unit of monster's face, and you describe how its eyeball bursts. Well, visceral factor there.
Just as an example, now this was a horror comedy, but in Death War Grease Paint, when I have Wilbur commit seppuku,
Mhm.
I purposely kept referencing the things he was doing and comparing them to things that you would associate with a clown. Like I was saying that his guts came out of him like confetti. Yeah, Willy Wonka is horror.
Oops. But example for me, like, even though I'm more of a novice when it comes to certain horror elements, Nasser actually does a pretty good job with slasher books, like, slasher fiction. And that's not very popular right now. Like, but you know what? I'll still promote his stuff here on the channel, because he does set a pretty good mood for both these books, because most slasher stuff has to start out kind of mundane and normal, and then you have to bring the creepy elements in. He actually does a pretty good job of setting up a sense of dread, because you're like, no, you stupid normies, don't go splitting up. Oh no.
Is this the prose or comics?
It's prose, but he does actually do comics as well, like horror comics specifically. But
well, in terms of prose, the slasher genre isn't very popular because of, first, primarily who's into it. A lot of people want to see the gore.
Yeah.
Second, to do an effective slasher story on paper, you got to be good. I mean, you really have to be good. And I guess the easy one is Psycho.
I don't consider that book a slasher.
Yeah.
Psycho. The actually, it's more of a novella. The novella is more of a psychological thriller. It's not a slasher.
Okay, so it's often credited as being a slasher.
No, it's not. Having read it, no, it's not.
Now, there is a genre called extreme horror, and that is a genre that really is trying to deliver that same gut punch and nausea of seeing massive amounts of blood and guts fly across the screen. That's not for the weak-stomached.
Well, I would say, even though this is more anime, that Ghost Stories thing did a really good job of balancing genuine horror moments with, some lighter stuff. Because it was basically how you showcase, like, setting up the mood. The creepy stuff doesn't settle in at first when the team's together, but over a couple of cases, it eventually ramps up to, like, oh my God, that house is going to kill you. It's like, oh.
Actually, that brings up a very good point, and that is, when you describe horror, or at least for both of you, since you're both writers, if you are adding horror elements, what is your end goal with adding that element? Is it to scare your audience? Is it to disturb them? Is it to give them the willies? Is it to gross them out? Because horror means different things to different people.
That's kind of a tough one. I mean, Death War Grease Paint for me is a horror comedy. I don't think it's actually scary. Some people think the ending is, when well, I don't want to say, but when the shit hits the fan, there are a number of people who actually said it was scary. For me, that was supposed to be more of a dark comedy with lots and lots of horror elements. Case File Arkham, on the other hand, the first one definitely has slasher elements, and to do that correctly, you only have one motion, since everything is flat on the page. Nothing moves. You can draw and make things look like they're in motion, but the only actual movement of it is the flip of the page. And when you're doing a scare, what you should do is lead the reader through draw them into the scene, get them really involved, get them looking in the other direction. Then you flip the page and you have your jump scare. And you usually want a full page image of just something coming at the reader.
Well, I know for sure a lot of the Lovecraft stories have the accidental dread down pat, where it's just like you feel like everything's closing in on you. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah, Lovecraft really wasn't going for terrifying. He was going for more mood, this feel of isolation, meaninglessness.
Mm-hmm.
It was more dread than actual fright.
But sometimes, depending on what you're trying to get across, that can be just as effective.
Yeah.
Like, because I've noticed that even some other shows I've been watching, like Space 1999, like they use certain elements where it's kind of like that creepiness sinks in with certain elements, but they offset it with the heroes acting heroically and all that. Because even paradoxically, or maybe on purpose, Event Horizon did the same thing.
Yeah,
I
that's
couldn't
one of the
help
reasons I
but
like
watch,
it.
even though it had a lot of really creepy factors. It's like, man, that captain's going to save his people, or at least try to.
Agreed. Another thing I would say is when you do a horror story, you have to put the character through absolute hell. You've got to take them to the brink of sanity. There's a kind of an example I like to use about violence and what's effective. And we've gotten to a point in this day and age where we're seeing mass destruction. How many films where whole cities get torched and millions are killed? And it really has absolutely no impact. What was it, Man of Steel?
Yeah.
I mean, apparently it looked neat, but it really didn't.
That's my biggest beef with that movie, and also why I take Fan Man's page from that. I call it Hobo of Steel, because he really doesn't act like how Superman should act. Superman would not allow that much collateral damage to happen to Metropolis.
Or any place.
Yep. Heck, even when Doomsday was basically roughing him up during that initial debut, he tried his hardest to keep Doomsday away from major cities and towns and everything else. And he even managed to pull families from safety from just when Doomsday was wrecking houses.
Which is now you're getting to my point. What you just described personalizes it. There's something at stake. And what I was going to say is what is far more effective than mass destruction, hundreds of people being killed off. This is so missed. People don't understand this. Just have one character you care about, that you've been drawn into, that you love, die, get shot in the face, unjust, brutally. That is effective. There's a difference. There's an emotional resonance, and it isn't the scale of the damage. It's the human element, and that's another thing.
Yeah. Like Ripley saying, "Get away from her, you bitch!" And it's like, oh, it's like, oh, that alien queen's gonna get its butt kicked in.
Well, no, actually, speaking of pushing characters to the brink, there was the scene where she loses her shit near the end when the alarms are going off and the ship's about to blow up.
In the first one.
Yeah, in the first one.
Yep.
And she's screaming at the computer.
Yeah. So
yeah, where she says a different kind of bitch line. Oops.
The next is, I would say, no one is safe. If your reader looks at it and says, okay, well, this person's going to survive, this person's going to survive. Oh, I don't have to worry about this person no matter what happens. No, you've got to make it clear from the onset, nobody's safe. Even better if you can convince the reader, maybe no one's making it out, which was one of the effective things about Event Horizon. The desolation of them being out. What was it? Neptune?
Yeah.
Orbiting Neptune, and Earth is just so far away. Where are they going to go? And there was that notion: are they even going to make it out? So.
Although I did like the one guy's defiance, I'm coming back, and he does like the whole flight.
He was great.
Space. I'm like, oh my god, but yeah, if you're going for more pure horror, then the overall narrative tension has to come from will they or won't they die.
Now, do the two of you prefer the like low, ominous, atmospheric, slow paced, or slow growing horror? Or do you prefer the fast paced adrenaline rush, even paranoia of things like the slasher films?
You know, I'm trying to think if there's ever a slasher film that I actually thought was good or enjoyable. I mean, I guess if you count Terminator, which it isn't. Yeah, I like the slow burn.
Yeah, I'm more like the creeping factor will kind of come up on you, kind of like the, even though it's a game, Alan Wake. That interests me fairly a good amount, because you don't see the overall horror until a little bit later, but you get to see like little glimpses of like, oh, something's not quite right here. So yeah, I probably enjoy more of a slow cooker depending on how things go. But if it's mixed with a certain other kind of wheelhouse, like even like, sci-fi or things like that, then I expect a little bit of a quicker pace.
Such as
Probably even like a mixture of between Alien and Aliens, like kind of have a pace kind of like in the middle of that.
well, I would say the thing you got to realize about Aliens is without the first film, it wouldn't really have a horror element.
Mm-hmm.
We've already had the shit scared out of us, and how vile these things can be. That first film is what built up the threat. Cameron didn't really have to do that.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, but there's. Let me try if I can find this series again, because I was reading it for a bit, and then he suddenly released another book. Oh man, where are you, thing? If I can, let me see if I spelled it correctly. This is the part where I have to go hunting.
Yang says the problem is most modern productions can't seem to conjure up one character to care about.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because that's why I keep looking at old horror stuff. Like if I do look at any other genres besides my favorite pew pew space fantasy stuff, it's mostly things from before the year 2000, especially. Because at least they did make you care about people in the first, like, say, 15 to 20 minutes you introduce a character. Because
that's what a film's supposed to do.
Yeah, and they had to make sure to set it up quick depending on the wheelhouse, because you only usually had about an hour and a half to get somebody to be invested. So it's like, yeah. Man, where the heck?
Acid Trip actually brings up a movie that I think is a good franchise to talk about. The Saw franchise. How the first film is vastly different from each subsequent films. And yet, especially with the second and third film, because I believe they were shot at almost the exact same time, a lot of people would say that they prefer those to the original and vice versa. Fianna, have you seen any of the Saw films?
I'm trying to remember. I think I saw the first one, and I think maybe like the third one. But I remember the first one sticking out a bit more because this guy had complete control over everybody, and he used like basic intimidation, but in surprising ways to get all these people to do these crazy things, all in the name of like survival or something.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd point out is that in the first film, most of the gory shit was in your mind. You never see the bear trap, bear trap mask go off.
No.
It's just the idea of what could have happened. And a lot of the traps are like that. You don't really see it. It just puts the idea of what that would be like. And even when they do show gore, it's very minimal in that first film. And I like the first film. I can't really say much for the rest of them, but that first film really is more about a killer. When trying to trace that killer, it really isn't just gore porn. I would say the third film is just sadism, And that is the only other one of the series that seemed to have any sort of plot. But whereas the first one really was giving you these characters that had multiple sides, they had relationships to each other, they were all connected in certain ways, and there was a real style and tone to the whole thing. The third one was, it went out of its way to introduce you to one character mainly, and that was the health insurance adjuster.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole point is obviously somebody, actually, I think the original writers wrote this one. I think somebody had a real hard time with their health insurance, because the plot is the health insurance guy gets captured in the night, wakes up in a factory, and he has to go through this obstacle course of just torture. And I mean, it is vile, sick shit. And then the very ending, what happens, that isn't a horror film. It really, that wasn't horror. That wasn't scary. That was definitely, this represents something I hate. This is something we've all really had a problem with. This is
cathartic.
Yeah, it's cathartic.
Or,
Definitely.
Not a passion, but yeah, it's a basically the voodoo doll that you put pins in to represent the thing that you hate.
If any of you actually care, stop now, but I'm going to ruin the ending of Saw 3. He goes through this whole trap, or this whole factory, and it's just a death maze. And he's had to kill co-workers, and he's had to actually killed a few people trying to survive. He had to crawl through barbed wire. It's all this really gratuitous shit. You know, a fish hook key is caught in his throat. Anyway, at the very end, they have him in a room. He thinks he's survived. He's made it. And he sees someone in the cage next to him. And, what's his face?
Jigsaw?
Jigsaw appears on the TV and says, "This is the guy that killed your dad." He decided his policy was just, his policy wasn't really, he was taking too much out of your policy. So he decided to cancel his policy. And that's why your dad's dead. Now, kid,
oh boy,
you have to decide, do you kill him or not? And that part was clever, because then suddenly there's your moral question. Where it got fucked up is then an entire, he pulls the lever, and an entire bed spring, each loaded with, hydrochloric acid. So it's like an Iron Maiden, or a spiked bed, covered in syringes full of hydrochloric acid, and they launch into the guy and he just melts apart. It's like, that was a bit much.
Yum.
It's a bit juicy there, I guess.
Yeah. But the films after just kept getting more and more sadistic, and it was just about seeing people die.
It's not about horror, it's about gore at that point.
So we have any other questions?
I am going through. Did you find what you were looking for, Fianna?
Oh, yes. I linked the book series. It's called The Derelict Saga.
Oh.
And it actually extrapolates kind of like what would happen if Event Horizon had gotten to Earth. Oopsie!
Oh. That's cool.
Yeah, it's like a 4-book setup so far. So, yeah, it's just like, I had to go hunting for it. And another movie that actually kind of stuck with me, even though it was kind of more low budget, was that Vanishing on 7th Street. I mean, that poor guy got sidetracked because of what happened with Star Wars, but he's actually played some pretty interesting roles, I think. But that thing made it kind of personal because it revolved around a handful of survivors, where kind of like extrapolating what happened to Roanoke, and then it's like, oh, it's happening to a whole big old city, and oh, now it's happening to the whole of Earth. I'm like, oopsie. Oh,
interesting.
Man.
That's an interesting concept. Another thing I would bring up about horror, and this is one of the areas people get the most wrong. The two biggest mistakes is they don't make it, characters are safe. You've got to start a story and you got to make sure that the reader doesn't know who's going to survive. The other thing is, especially with supernatural elements, unless you're doing some sort of science fiction, don't over-explain it. It should remain mysterious.
Star Storyteller, no, I did not. I'm trying to find your question for you.
For instance, cosmic horror, especially with the Lovecraftian stuff, I have seen so many stories completely ruined because they tried to explain too much. And when you explain something, you can measure it. It becomes a known quantity. It's not a mystery anymore. And you start to make it safe. When you name something, it becomes more safe. And so you really don't want to reveal too much. I thought it would have been much better in the Saw franchise, for instance, if they never did fully explain Jigsaw. We got to know him way too well. He was obviously the star. It was about him then.
Even though this is recent, I thought that an adaptation of how they were investigating that Zodiac killer stuff, that had plenty of horror elements because of what he was doing to people. But since the overall thing wasn't really, I don't know about recently because I looked that up after the movie, and some people are saying like, "Oh, this cold case, we cracked it finally," but what they had to go on, kind of the overall end mystery, even though it left some things up in the air, it's just like whoa. So anybody really could have been the Zodiac or a copycat at the time.
Well, Ishii knows a little bit about the Zodiac.
Is that my
Quite a
internet?
bit,
Oh,
in
my
fact. Which part do you want me to tell?
Well, she was bringing up almost anybody could be him. Now it's a cold case. How it's creepy.
Well,
Yeah.
the thing is, the junior college in my town, my city, is where he had his first killing. It's also believed that one of the suspects lived in a place called Woodcrest, which I'm very familiar with. And then I lived in San Francisco and saw a lot of those locations. They did get a decent profile on who he may be, but ultimately, it is the fact that he didn't get caught. He was smarter than the police. He was dangerous. I mean, usually you get killers in two forms. Rock stupid, like Henry, A Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Mhm.
That's just a broken man. And then you get clever bastards like Hannibal Lecter. And then the Zodiac was the real deal. And one thing that always bugged me about that is the investigators never looked into the occult element of those murders. They've mainly focused on the murders, the victims, and the notes he sent. But it was very clear, if you read all those letters, he had some sort of weird Egyptian-based religion he was following, because he said he was collecting slaves and whores for the afterlife to serve him. Not only that, he had a numerology and lunar cycles to determine when and where he would murder people. And he was kind of, his victims were kind of like Shopties. If you want to tell about that.
Oh, the Shopties were the clay figures that they would find in tombs and in burial mounds that would be servants or even work for you in the afterlife so that you could have a day off.
Yeah.
Well, as far as like a main thriller type of setup, I guess the big difference for thriller contrasting with horror, thriller is kind of like a mile a minute. Everything's happening, kind of like a Bourne Identity kind of setup, or like a Tom Clancy, basically, where you just have one domino effect getting the other domino effect, but it's almost like moving the plot from A, B, C, D, and then there's the big old climax. But most of the time they get the page to turn because like of all the little developments that keep popping up, rather than the overall mood, I would guess. At least in my somewhat limited experience.
Ishii?
What?
How does thriller contrast with horror?
Well, thrillers tend to be primarily psychological or grounded in reality. That's the big difference, is they're grounded in reality. You don't have cosmic monsters or slashers usually. You can do a slasher thriller, but the focus is different. And that goes back to tone. A slasher film has a certain tone and it focuses on certain things. A thriller would look at other elements and would not focus in on the gore and the killing. And it would be more the pursuit, the paranoia, the chase.
Okay.
and the risk.
And Dominic Powell asks, what are the best cosmic horror works from books and games to movies and television?
The best one I ever read, outside of the Master Lovecraft, of course, would be Charles Stoss. He wrote a short story. I forget what it was called, unfortunately, but it was the Cold War. They had weaponized the technology of the old ones, or the elder things. And things were coming through dimensional gates, and they were using it to weaponize. And it just spirals into, they invite Cthulhu into their world. And it goes real bad. Because he didn't ever really explain too much. And if he did explain something, it only brought up more questions. Like there's one part where they're trying to figure out what the hell one of these Lovecraftian creatures are. And they dissect it, and they do a DNA test. And he says, that thing's not made of DNA. We don't even understand what it's made of. And so that was really interesting. I would say the best cosmic horror is, frankly, I would have to say Prince of Darkness.
Cool.
Prince of Darkness, definitely.
Let's see. Well, I guess depending on what you're looking for, even Vampire Hunter D has a fair amount of cosmic horror elements, but it has a little bit more futuristic underpinnings as well, and a bit of gothic.
Are you talking the two movies or the books?
The actual books.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that.
Because the anime adaptations try to bring some stuff across, but if you really want to get kind of like a strangely pulpy yet vibrant kind of prose, take a look at those books. I'm like, oh my god! It's like I hope some of my stuff ends up being retold that way someday. Like, ooh, because he can say a lot with very few words.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, that's one thing I liked about the Vampire Hunter D books is even though they're translated, you can tell they're definitely written with Howard's pulp style, but it also conveys a lot in a short amount of time. So very cool. Okay. Ishii had to step away for a split second, but that is okay. So let's see. Let's hear.
And games also, give Alan Wake a try. I mean, it does have kind of like that weird Twin Peaks meets what kind of vibe? Let's see. Strangely enough, what was that one other game? This is the bad part of the night where it's like I'm trying to recall things. It's like at the tip of my tongue. But
I hate that.
Yeah, it ended up being a cult classic and re-released on the Wii, of all things. Oh man, but Alan Wake is probably a pretty decent, horror setup. It's a bit surreal at times, but they kind of had to go that route, especially with some of the later content. Kind of like a Twilight Zone touch to it too.
Interesting. No, I haven't played the Alan Wake game, so that's great to hear. I actually hadn't heard reviews on them either, so that's wonderful.
Oh, for Wolften Media, no, it wasn't Control, even though Control does have a creepy factor, and it wasn't the darn the stuff by the guys who did the Dishonored game, but it was set in the future. I'm still trying to remember even that Prey. There was Prey, but there's also that one other game with the guy who was like the weird detective from Twin Peaks kind of setup. But he had to go through kind of like Silent Hill level weird hospitals and all the crazy kooky people of the town. But I'm still trying to remember what that game's called. But he kept and he had like an imaginary partner he would talk to.
Oh,
and he really liked coffee.
Yeah.
Hey, I was never in a game.
But no, I'm trying to remember what the darn game
No.
was called.
I've seen the game you're talking about.
I know about Evil Within, but it wasn't that one. What the heck was it
Deadly
called?
Premonition.
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
Thank you, Panda Power.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
there we go. That was the
Okay.
one. Although Evil Within does have a creepy factor as well, and even that other game where I called it Hiding in the Closet Simulator.
Alien Isolation.
Well, besides that one was also Hiding in the Closet Simulator. What the heck? But it's where you have to use batteries to light up your recorder.
Yes, you're in the asylum.
Yes.
Yes. Oh.
I mean, I'm really bad at recalling names tonight. I'm like,
It's okay.
I just know because Krillin played it. Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Wolf 10. Outlast.
yep, hiding in the closet. Oh my
Well-
God, it's dragging something hiding in the closet.
I explained the game that but one of the games that gave me scares last night or the night before last, where I talked about System Shock 2.
Oh, yes.
Where the giant or the dog-sized spiders that were semi-transparent that would climb up you.
Mhm.
I hated the monkeys. I hated those monkeys.
Yeah, and the monkeys were
Fucking
terrifying. And the thing is that, again, that goes to atmosphere. One of the things that made that game so effective was the sound design. It wasn't even the music. It was just the sound design.
Mhm.
You heard things in the corner, and then you'd hear the ship creak and make noises. And it was just brilliant the way they did that. And it was often what you didn't see that was what got you thinking and got you scared.
Mhm.
And then every occasion, it would really deliver, like a spider climbing up and trying to bite your face off. But I would say, since I already got into that, a different kind of horror game, which was very effective for its time, and that's Manhunt.
Oh, that.
Not because Manhunt was well, I take that back. No, I had a few times I actually jumped.
Yeah.
But there is such a grim, sick feeling to that whole game. That whole you're basically entering a real life nightmare, and the brutality of it. And I know that some people didn't get it. I was going through a really rough time in my life, and what got me about that game was just the deaths weren't bloodless. The deaths weren't easy. It wasn't like so many games where if you kill someone, they just fall over and disappear. No, when you kill someone, you see it. And it was a bit stomach turning, I'll admit at times. But I felt in some degree I needed to experience that.
Oh, I'm actually have my thing up for both, so I can keep linking different things to both of them at the same time.
Thank you, Fiona.
Like, there
Apparently,
we go. Oh, but no, actually, even though it wasn't listed as a horror game, that initial Laura Croft setup where the way she could die, I'm like, I don't want to see her die. Oh God, no, because they really animated like if she hit a rock or a log or failed a QT event. I'm like, oh my God.
I remember that.
Like, I mean, again, people, you wonder why, even though I have a few cosmic horror elements with Upload Protocol, it's like, I would say 75% hopeful.
well, we've had this question before, and you can make horror hopeful. I mean, what it is the horror, often for me at least, the way I encounter fiction, I rarely relate to a character. For me, it's watching these individuals go through their struggle or their crucible. Do they survive? How do they react? What happens to them? And what stood out about Event Horizon is how these people reacted to that horror. The sacrifice. There was a real humanity to that story. Opposed to most of the characters in Hellraiser. Where they were just dickheads.
But yeah, like even I linked and yes, I am biased towards the Cliptic because I follow Mr. David Room, also on the bird side of Everyday Madness. But he does do a pretty decent balance of what you expect from, say, something like Event Horizon. He doesn't quite have as much gore. What he does have in there, it's basically written for effect. So that's why he
Yeah.
doesn't go over the top. He kind of just builds up the suspense, and he builds up the mystery at the same time. So if you do like old style fashioned occult kind of horror, he's got that in there. And yes, it does have like a Christian mythology underpinnings, but it's very interesting. It's like that's why I'm looking at so many different people, even to help with my own writing, just because that's really what it's there for. Like if you feel like you're weak in a category, start reading more books in a different category where they focus on the things you're weak on.
Well, bringing up the Christian mythology is a good thing. For those who really want to understand horror as literature, especially, prior to Lovecraft, horror was always based in a Christian universe. There was an underlying set of morals. There was an underlying set of what was evil and what happened when you died, the side of the devil, side of the angels. And so there were rules, and you knew parameters, and you knew what would happen after you died, and there were things you could do to save yourself. Lovecraft's universe was cold, atheist, and heartless. You didn't matter. You were a fly. And that is one of the things that, I have seen so many people try to force Christianity, a framework of Christianity, into the Lovecraft's world. It doesn't work. I have Hank Flynn, the detective of my, Case File Arkham books, and he's Catholic. And I have that in there that you don't ever really know how that plays in on a supernatural level. It doesn't matter. It's the fact that faith is what keeps him going and keeps him strong. That's how it functions. But I don't put in there, okay, and well, there are these angels and there's this. No, it's better if the world beyond is really hard to understand. And
his faith does not dictate what actually is and is not reality.
Mhm.
That's not the point.
Right. And the fact is, he has those morals. The universe doesn't.
Yeah, and right now, nowadays, with most modern stuff, it's hard to find a character in the mainstream that isn't made to be a ridicule of certain kinds of religious denominations. But I find it interesting if you make a person a particular denomination and then you have them relay their morality and everything through that lens, and it's much more interesting to portray that as more of a positive effect rather than a negatives, because so many people are used to just, this character's really secular. That's the reason why I like the pulps, because I like seeing heroes that have their morality and their virtue steeped in a religion that's literally there to help them. Because I've already seen like so many breakdowns of like, religion and bad and everything, and it's like,
I've mentioned this a few times with my Case File Arkham series. Hank Flynn is an Irish Catholic, and I will say that a co-creator was very pushing that he's rebelling against the church. I said, no, that doesn't work. So I just tried to portray him as just a realistic Catholic. It didn't really factor in.
No. Finish your thought, and then I have a question for the two of you.
It didn't really factor into anything else other than it was part of who he was. It was his morals. It's what he believed. It really, I was so sick of seeing Christians and Catholics being treated like utter shit in fiction and being dupes and having no morals. It's like, come on. We're done. Okay. We've gotten that story.
Yep. I mean, even as you're saying about like the first couple issues with the Uplift prologue book, I wanted to have a positive influence with a priest blessing poor Mr. Michael before he got the oopsie daisy.
Oh, I will say there is something. His Catholicism did influence the fact that he feels a lot of guilt.
Yeah. Like, oh man. Trust me, later I understand Catholic guilt because I am a Catholic, but so I'm also going to use that angle to have Michael develop a relationship with his his unintended family later. I'll put it that way.
Since you're a Catholic, if you ever get around to reading my Arkham books, I'd love to hear what you think.
Oh yeah, it's just I have like about 6 or 7 other things that I had promised that I'd put on the channel as reviews first.
Kat has a question.
Yes.
This is for both of you, and I think that this is a very important question to ask. For the most part, cosmic horror, not so much. But for the most part, in horror, there is usually some moral property, good, bad, angelic, demonic, heaven, hell, or these guys are assholes and these are the good guys, things like that. I know cosmic horror, not so much, depends on what angle is being taken, since that's usually a descent into madness.
In cosmic horror, the morals are a framework of humanity.
But my question is that also seems to be something that waxes and wanes with importance depending on the particular horror story being told. How important is morals for the two of you?
Okay, well, when I wrote Death or Grease Paint, it is a carnival of ghouls. Not literally. The saying is basically we're watching a bunch of bad people have bad things happen to them by their own design. Okay, there is no good person in that story.
So for yours, it is still important because it's very specific. These are all bad people.
Well, yeah, like the one of the two main characters, the television station director, is a failed Hollywood guy who had banged a director's daughter or a producer's daughter who was underage, and it killed his career. So he was stuck at a public access station in Michigan, and the whole time you're getting this, this upscale, broken, morally bankrupt Hollywood mentality in this small town. For Case File Arkham, it was vital that the protagonist be a strong moral force. It's interesting is noir is always portrayed as being morally ambiguous. That's bullshit. No,
the actual noir, the hero has ironclad morality. Like,
right.
Oof.
The traditional detective, especially Marlowe, is the one the one honest man in the group. He's got a code, he's got morals, and he's not going to break them for anybody. And I really wanted to follow that.
Fianna.
Oh yeah, for me, especially in horror, it makes a clear contrast when you have a character step up to the plate and be kind of like that beacon to get people through. Like, example is the one lady that sacrificed herself so the children and everything could be freed. The one the one actor that played not Obi-Wan. Well, yeah, Obi-Wan's mentor. Or God, what was that
Liam
movie?
Neeson?
Yeah, Liam Neeson was in it with this lady, and they went to this creepy old mansion where the spirits of the children were trapped in it. And she was taking care of her dying mother, and then
that was a House on Haunted Hill. No,
I think
Haunting of Hill House.
There we go. But the overall morality of the characters played into what happened with that house. So for me, yeah, morality and horror seems to mesh fairly well, so you can have a clear contrast.
I would agree.
So it's basically a fundamental thing that both of you agree, at least for your own stories, needs to be present.
Yeah, well, the problem is we've reached a point in our culture where a large segment doesn't believe in evil, doesn't believe there's good or bad, believes everything's relative, believes that there is nothing means anything. That makes for shitty stories. You need moral definites to tell an effective tale.
And even if you don't like the white hat versus black hat mentality, sometimes for some stories, that worked out perfectly fine.
Real quick, Horizon Talker, this is another subject for another day, my friend.
You
Seriously.
nailed it. Are you a writer, by the way? Just some of your comments make me wonder.
All right. So let's see. I'm looking through the chat. What people say.
I'm
Yes?
still in the toddler phase when it comes to writing, but that's okay because I've learned a lot, even in the past year.
Well, you may be just starting your chops as far as writing goes. I haven't read your story yet, but Ishi was telling about it.
You're on your way.
You know what is good and you know what is not. That will carry you through.
It's sometimes it's easier to see what will tune you in versus what will tune you off by reading stuff even outside your thing, even watching the train wreck that is Anita Blake, and it's like, no, yeah.
Yeah.
Or even Empress Teresa, because really, my first rough draft of Upload Protocol was semi like that, but I didn't even recognize it until I looked back at it. I'm like, oh, wow, I really did kind of form it initially as a list. And then eventually I learned, like, okay, how do my favorite pulps do dialogue? Okay, how do they do that? Okay.
But unlike Empress Teresa, you learned and you grew and you took your critiques. Bar one, they mutilated the original book. Yes, I agree. But what about the original book did you think was effective? I am very curious.
And I haven't even read the book for it. I was just impressed by the fact that they had a lady character sacrifice herself to save children? What?
Which is not in the book.
But still, it was just like they had her do that, where it's like a little bit more of a maternal instinct kicking in. I'm like, wow, and they didn't make fun of it. Huh.
Interesting.
Let's see here.
Agreed, Neostar.
Which one? This one?
It's not really.
Okay.
All right. Well, we've got 9 minutes left. Should we do our closing comments?
First, do the two of you have any final thoughts? Anything that we didn't cover on tonight's topic that you want to bring up? Or anything from tonight's topics that you want to expand upon?
I think that I'm going to need to dig up my lesson I gave on how to do scares in comic books and make that episode.
Didn't we record it?
No. I mean the presentation, the slides, and all that in the script.
Yeah, didn't we record?
No, I want to make a full video.
Oh, okay.
Very nice. Yeah, because that requires a different set of brushes rather than in prose format.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy. As for me, I guess the only other series I can mention, like the Sun Eater series by Christopher Ruccio, it kind of starts off as what you would think is a standard space opera or space fantasy setup, but eventually he really starts digging into the whole cosmic horror angle of ancient, ugly things out there. Oh my.
Let's see. Acid trip. We need morals to come back in order to make things better. The gray area isn't going to help anything in stories or life.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem. If nothing means anything, well, what's good? What's bad? I mean, if there's no difference between Michelangelo's work and somebody shitting on period blood, which I'm not making that up,
or nailing a banana to a wall.
Yeah, that.
Then that's why that's the destruction of values, beauty. So yeah.
Bar one, real quick. Isn't the banana thing like 10 years old now or something insane like that?
Bayonetta?
But banana thing.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe.
I my local radio station did a little thing. It's like, it was 10 years ago today that the banana was on the wall. Like, what the hell? Anyway, bar one, easiest way to write horror is to actually work from a Christian worldview. Assume Earth is fallen and every individual is besieged by demonic forces.
I mean, it's so ingrained into American culture. I mean, but that's also why postmodernism is trying to destroy it. Because even if you're not particularly religious in one way or another, everybody knows what demons versus angels is. At least on the broad strokes level.
No, let me put it this way. In the moral relativism point of view, Freddy Krueger isn't a bad guy. He just had a bad childhood.
Yeah.
So if he's not evil, then anything you do to him is meaningless.
Yeah, that's what causes me the most pain when I'm trying to find things to. That's why I have to go to the indie sphere to try to find more old school style storytelling where it's like, here's some stakes, and here's what the heroes are going to do about it, or how they're going to react to it until they come back punching hard in the finale. Oh,
And I will say, in this age of moral relativism, notice how many in the rainbow community viewed Pennywise the Clown as a hero they identified with.
As a gay icon, no
Yeah,
less.
they said he was a gay icon. That says everything.
Bar one, hell, pick a conspiracy theory and say this is fact. Go from there. So aglets are really having a sinister purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Aglets are the little pieces of plastic on the end of your shoestrings.
Really, the underlying thing that you need to know about horror and scares is we are all scared of the same things: losing the ones we love, disfigurement, pain, loss, having your life ripped away, darkness. There are things that we all share. And the old archetypes, I really should have gotten into Macbeth, why it's a horror story and why it works.
We can do another show on that.
Yeah, I think the dry mouth I'm suffering is making this show very hard.
Well, that and I had Florida level amnesia about titles. Like, yeah, I know I'm caught in the fog, which yeah, I'm like, oh my god, the way they ended that one movie though, I think it was called The Fog or whatever.
Oh, The Fog's a great film.
Because apparently Stephen King or something did different. And
oh, you're thinking The Mist.
Or yeah, The Mist. There we go. Yes. But even in The Mist though, they didn't really portray some of the religious people well. It's like, come on, have a little bit more faith. Oh well, dang it, it goes nuts.
Dominic Powell asks, why aren't the horror heroes talked about or remembered as much as the iconic and obscure horror villains?
Because the heroes don't scare the hell out of you. They don't look weird. They don't haunt your dreams.
They're you.
That's where Solomon Kane comes in. He's a hero that you won't forget.
That is true.
Man, the things he goes through sometimes seems to make Berserk seem tame in comparison. I should know this because Samueli over there on Discord describes some of the fun that Solomon Kane goes through. I'm like, oh my goodness. Oof.
Yeah, Solomon Kane's a badass.
I mean, even the movie only lightly touches on it, but still, it's just like, ouch, that's a gut punch. I mean, it does end on a more hopeful note, but again, like I'm kind of teetering back and forth where it's like there's only so much I can put in my tank before I'm like, okay, I need to go write about some uplifted Bardaxians again to clear the playing field here. I need something wholesome. Help.
And I appreciate that you see that there's a lack in media and you're trying to help fill that.
All right, let's call it a night.
So, Fianna, last thoughts and where can people find you?
Well, my last thoughts is don't feel like you have to be constrained by genre, wheelhouse, whatnot. The old pulps ended up mashing a whole lot of stuff together, like, oh, space pirates on Venus. Oh, Sherlock Holmes investigating Bigfoot. They basically mashed all sorts of ideas together. Don't be afraid to mash ideas together. It could create something amazing.
Definitely. And where can people find you?
I'm on Burb site as Fianna Wolf 2, and also on Minds as Fianna Wolf, and Gab as Fianna Wolf, and I got my blog here with my story, which again, things shall probably be revised later, but the overall finished stuff will probably be middle of 2023. But if you want to see the train going choo choo, I'll link it in the chat. There we go.
Well, it's already down in the description.
Yep.
In fact, all the links are down in the description for our various people who show up on the show.
All right, well, there we go.
Now, I'm beginning to lose my voice, so I'm going to have Kat talk us out.
Well, as mentioned before, go join us over on
Wordcraft.
thank you, on Wordcraft. I keep wanting to say Warcraft, and that's
Warcraft.
not it. It's on
That was the joke.
Yes, on Wordcraft, our new podcast, link in the description below, where you will find such fine programming as this, The Writer's Room, along with my own Night Editor, where we also be doing Talking Shop, and we will also be doing Can It Be Saved?
And tomorrow, you're going to hear a video's going up, a new night editor, or no, a new night editor.
Mhm.
Oh, it's Talking Shop. I'm sorry. Where Kat lets loose on the new Ghostbusters trailer.
Oh, yes.
That will go live at 8:00 tomorrow.
I have thoughts. I have more thoughts than what's in that episode, but I have thoughts.
Yeah, the plan for this channel is to try and get videos up at least like 3 times a week.
Mhm.
Not including the streams.
Hey, and if I'm not currently at Retail Woes for said job, I'll join you guys if you want me to.
Awesome.
That would be cool.
Definitely. All right. And also, Whispers from the Abyss is now available as an audiobook. So if you enjoyed volumes 1 and 2, go check out the audio. It's available now through Audible and on Amazon. Link in the description. Something great to listen to while you're waiting for the trick-or-treaters to come by.
Some high-profile writers, including myself. No, but actually some pretty big name writers contributed to the anthology. It's all Lovecraftian-inspired horror.
Correct.
And you've got a story on it.
I do have a story on it. And if you listen to it or if you have read the books, please let me know what you think of my story. And as always, thank you everybody for joining us this evening, and we will see you on our next show. Thank you
Well,
very much.
I'm going to answer one more thing because was it Horizon Talker asked a question I want to answer.
Oh, okay.
And that is, yes, we are posting things on Odyssey, and pretty soon everything will be there. First off,
Is this one Nadine?
Nadine's got his own channel, Nadine's Nerdland. All the because he's been pulled off multiple times here.
True.
A lot of the episodes aren't here anymore.
He's absolutely haram. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
He is her own.
So here is Nadine's
in every
Nerdland.
sense of the word.
And he only has 6 followers on Odyssey. That's just a crime. Go fix that.
Oh, man, I mean, even I've broken into Odyssey, but it just seems like with how stuff goes, the biggest alternatives I can think of right now besides YouTube or even the Burb site is basically Minds. Like they're probably the second biggest thing besides maybe Gab. But the thing is with Gab, I will still post things on there, but what gets more traction over there is just talking overall politics, and it's like, guys, don't not just the politics, talk other things too. But I'm stubborn. I have a couple of people that follow Uplift Protocol over there too, so I keep posting there.
The other link here is Adventures in Awful on Odyssey, and these are the original 12 episodes that got banned.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to have new fully produced episodes soon.
Yes. And speaking of which, Scars only needs 2 more reviews in order for us to do Mom.
Oh, man.
Oh, Mama.
I recently saw another panel from that, and I'm like, I'm so sorry you had to read that, because I'd seen just that one little bit about, but you're a woman. It's like, how is that going to change anything? It's psycho. They're all psycho in there.
Oh, that's not even the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. No, guess what, guys? 1 review on Scars is all we need.
1 left. That's all we need.
Somebody go buy it and review it. Please. And I will start posting Adventures in Awful episodes again.
Yes. Yes, please
Very
do,
nice.
so we can share the pain with all of you. All right. Anything else?
No, I'm losing my voice.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Go review Scar so we can torture you with Mom, and we will see you very soon.
Bye.
Good night.